whereas in Istanbul there were the issues of poverty going on, but at the same time there was a lively milieu of cultural life, and this cultural life was actually centered in Pera, Beyoğlu district, and so here the interests combine. Like when I was dealing with Anatolian famines, the questions that I tried to deal with were how did the famine weigh on the communities? So those forgotten voices of people, locals, real people, actual actors who had to face these disasters. And for our talk of theater today, for the history of theater today in the late Ottoman era, we are dealing with this question of lost voices. So how to reach the voices of those lost actors, historical actors, but also literally actors and producers on stage, on the actual stage. This is nothing new. Like this is like the whole historiography of the late Ottoman Empire, early Turkish Republic. People have been dealing with these questions. Like a younger generation of historians, like social scientists, they are producing works being inspired from many diverse sources, asking questions about those forgotten voices of the late Ottoman and early Republican milieu, like women, children, non-Muslim communities, non-Muslim communities who became minorities of the Republican era. So this is not what we are trying to do here is nothing new, but a contribution to that perspective of trying to grasp who were the producers of late Ottoman really theater, where did their voices go, what happened to these people with the establishment of the Turkish Republic, what happened to a multilingual, multi-religious space with the establishment of the Turkish Republic and afterwards. Where did those spaces and where did those actors go? And what does it do to us, or when we remember them, what does it mean to remember? But first of all, let's try to imagine the theater atmosphere of late Ottoman Istanbul and its aura. What is there? What kind of places? What kind of actors? We can say that like real professionalization starts from the 1850s. Before, performances were part of private life mainly at coffee houses, elite dwellings. Metin Ant, one of the most prominent historians of Ottoman and Turkish theater, observed that the Ottoman palace showed very much interest in the theater groups coming to Istanbul from abroad, especially during times of Selim III, so late 19th century, at the end of 18th century, and Mahmud II, the beginning of 19th century. The history of Ottoman modernization, in fact, takes as a reference point the years of Selim III, when it was a time when the first initiatives for a modern order, administration, and army started to develop. So other influential actors for the development of the theater in the Ottoman Empire were embassies of European countries. Beyoğlu, again, Pera region in Istanbul, Taksim Square, where the Gezi Park protest took place. So the famous Grand Pera, the avenue, they were the embassies, theater, the first modern professional theater halls were built around this area, and there were also the diplomatic residencies here. So Pera Beyoğlu, as a port city also, Istanbul, in the late 19th century, becoming a diplomatic and financial center, this place becoming this center, cultural production also grew around this area. And my friends will talk about, again, Beyoğlu. We will be continuously making reference to Beyoğlu and the transformation of this space today, what's happening there, because it has connections. Now we are face to face with an Istanbul who really lost most of its non-Muslim population. So it's not just going on in the theater scene, but in the whole social, economic, and political milieu of Ottoman Istanbul, we see another story with the rising nationalism.
When we come to the establishment of the Republic, we are seeing a completely different picture, and I will try to make it really short. Well, this is actually a very short list of the historical events of the Turkish Republic, and you can see that we have so many coups in our history, and it actually affected so many things in the cultural scene of Turkey. You will see especially the 1961 constitutional charter will be very important for the artists in Turkey, and the 1980 coup d'etat will change everything for the cultural scene of Turkey, because people will be afraid of talking about politics in Turkey. And when it comes to Özdemir Nutku's classification, you can see that he kind of sees different generations, that he says that generation after the First World War was concerned about something completely different. They were trying to praise the nation. They were trying to encourage the public after the First World War. And the generation of the first 20 years of the Republic, the playwrights or the directors and actors of the period, they are trying to put on plays that actually talk about the reforms of Atatürk. They are trying to praise the reforms of Atatürk, and they are actually trying to show the public that we are okay. We have something new, but it's okay. The most important thing still relevant today is copyright of the playwrights, copyright of the translators. So he says that if we are not working legally, if we are not giving the playwright or the translator or anyone who is showing an artistic work, if we are not giving them their royalties, then we are not making it professional. It won't be a professional field of art. But at the same time, when you look at the history of drama and theater in general in Turkey, especially when you look at the period between 1923 and 2000s, 2010s, you can see so many different types of theater groups. Some of them supported by the government, some of them are completely independent and coming on the surface of the cities, that they are building their own theater groups, building their own theater spaces, or the government itself is trying to help with these kind of establishments. The most important thing here is that the Darul Bedai municipality, or with its old name, City Theatres, Istanbul City Theatre, is something that we actually inherited from the Ottoman Empire. It was Darul Bedai was not only the conservatory, but it was also the name of the city theaters at the time. Well, Özge also mentioned Muhsin Ertuğrul. Muhsin Ertuğrul is seen as the most important public figure when it comes to theater tradition in Turkey. He's seen as you can see that he actually directed state theaters and city theaters. But the problem with him is that he is actually coming from this 19th century non-Muslim theater tradition. But when he's offered this role as the director of the city theaters, he chose to refuse his connection with his background, with his friendship with his masters, actually, in theater, his Armenian masters. And at the same time, he followed the same westernization in Turkish theaters, and he actually leave no room for creativity or finding a new voice in Turkey. Metin Han, for example, says that yes, he established modern theater in Turkey, but he also kind of stopped it from evolving, stopped it from getting better. theater groups in the top of the list, they continued their lives in the new Turkey, but they started to be active in Tanzimat period. And you can see that we have the coming of more political theater groups. They are private theaters, and they start to be more and more political. Beyoğlu, which was always the center of arts and culture, and especially center of theater, has changed its meaning after Gezi protests. And you can see it doesn't stop theater people from being active. They are just changing their premises, and they are moving to different places. And these are the groups without a permanent stage, without a permanent playhouse. We are one of them. But it also gives you a freedom of movement. It gives you creativity. So I think I have to give Ebru.
Yeah. Hi, merhaba. We are out of time, so I would like. I think I'm going to give you detail tomorrow. So if you'll be there, I can only say that what is missing here will be our next session subject, which is Kurdish theater, which is women in theater, which is Armenians back to theater, and which is diversity and working together. And among this, after Gezi or before Gezi, and I think it's going to be more hopeful for the future because I'm going to talk about the mobility of the groups. I'm going to talk about the passion to work together. I'm going to talk about new wave of playwriting. I'm going to talk about Agora, which is Hannah Arendt suggested, and how we create this Agora as alternative theaters and independent theaters. And I think it's going to be somehow surprising because you are going to hear a voice from Turkey saying that everything's going to be all right. And yeah, thank you now.